The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. The walls were covered with the flags of 300 species, each one representing millions of worlds and billions of lives. In the center of this massive room, a single human stood at a podium that was designed for creatures twice his size. Daniel Perry had served as humanity's ambassador for 15 years. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had seen many votes in this hall. He had watched species argue over trade routes and borders. He had helped settle disputes that could have become wars. But today was different. Today, the Council was voting on humanity's future. "The motion is simple," said the elder who led the session. His blue skin shimmered under the lights as he spoke. "Humans have expanded too quickly. They take jobs that belong to other species. They spread to worlds that should remain empty. We must place limits on their growth." Daniel listened quietly. He had heard these arguments before. Humans had joined the Council only 200 years ago. In galactic terms, they were bobbies. Most species had been members for thousands of years. They saw humans as useful workers, good at fixing things and solving problems, but not worthy of real respect. "Furthermore," continued Aura, the trade minister, "humans demand equal voting rights. This is unreasonable. They have contributed nothing of true value to our great civilization." The hall filled with sounds of agreement. Clicks, whistles, and growls echoed from the gathered delegates. Daniel watched their faces. Some looked bored, others looked pleased. Very few looked at him with anything like kindness. The vote was quick. 300 species were represented, and 247 voted in favor of the restrictions. Humanity would lose its colony rights beyond 3 systems. Human workers would need special permits to work on alien worlds. Human votes in the Council would count for half of what other species received. Turned to Daniel with what might have been a smile on his alien face. "Ambassador Perry, you may respond to the Council's decision." Daniel stepped forward. The hall grew quiet. Many expected him to argue. Others expected him to beg. A few expected him to threaten. Humans were known for their emotions, after all. They were passionate creatures who felt things deeply. Instead, Daniel simply nodded. "We understand," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "We will comply with the Council's wishes." The silence that followed was uncomfortable, tilted his head. "That is all, no protest, no appeal." "No," Daniel said. "You have made your feelings clear. We will not stay where we are not wanted." He gathered his papers and walked out of the hall. His footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. Behind him, the delegates began to whisper among themselves. This was not the reaction they had expected. Humans were supposed to fight. They were supposed to make noise. This quiet acceptance felt wrong somehow. Over the next few weeks, humans began to leave. They did not make speeches or cause scenes. They simply packed their belongings and went home. Human doctors closed their clinics and said goodbye to their patients. On stations, human engineers finished their current projects and handed over their tools. On dozens of worlds, human teachers, builders, and mediators quietly ended their work. Maria Santos was one of the last to leave the capital. She had spent 30 years maintaining the power systems that kept the city running. Her team of 12 humans had worked alongside engineers, teaching them, helping them, and fixing problems that no one else could solve. "You cannot just leave," said her supervisor. "Who will maintain the reactors?" Maria smiled sadly. "You will. We trained your people for years. You should be fine." "But what if something goes wrong?" "Then you will figure it out," Maria said. "That is what we always did." She walked to the transport ship without looking back. Beside her, other humans carried bags and boxes filled with their lives. Children held their parents' hands. Old people leaned on younger ones. They moved in silence, a river of humanity flowing away from worlds that no longer wanted them. On Earth, Lisa watched the ships arrive. She was a historian, and she knew that she was watching something important. Millions of humans were coming home from across the galaxy. They brought with them skills and knowledge that they had gained from working with alien species. They also brought stories of being treated as lesser beings, as servants, as tools to be used and then discarded. "How do you feel?" Lisa asked one returning worker, a young man named Holt who had served as a navigator on trade ships. "Thought for a moment. Tired," he said, "but also free. I spent 10 years guiding alien ships through dangerous space. They never once said thank you. They never once treated me as an equal. I am glad to be home." The Galactic Council celebrated their victory, gave speeches about protecting galactic culture from human influence. Aura announced new trade agreements that would benefit merchants now that human competition was removed. The news networks across the galaxy praised the Council's wisdom. No one noticed the small things at first: a communication relay that stopped working, a water treatment plant that needed repairs, a hospital that ran out of a medicine that only humans knew how to make. These were tiny problems, easy to ignore. But tiny problems have a way of growing, and the galaxy was about to learn just how much it had depended on the species it had just pushed away. The humans were gone, and they had taken more with them than anyone realized. Daniel Perry stood on a hill outside his childhood home in Colorado and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien species were celebrating his people's departure. They thought they had won something. They thought they had protected themselves from human ambition. They had no idea what was coming. 3 months after the vote, the first real problems began to appear. They started small, like cracks in a wall that no one bothers to fix. But cracks have a way of spreading, and these cracks spread fast. The food storage facilities began to fail. The cooling systems that kept millions of tons of food fresh simply stopped working one day. Engineers rushed to fix them, but they could not understand the technology. It was human-designed, built by human hands, and maintained by human workers for over a century. Aura, the trade minister who had spoken so strongly against humans, stood in a warehouse full of rotting grain. The smell was terrible. Around her, workers tried desperately to save what they could, but it was too late. Half the planet's food reserves were already spoiled. "Who built these systems?" she demanded. "Humans," her assistant answered quietly. "They designed them 80 years ago. They have maintained them ever since." "Then find humans to fix them." "We tried. Earth says they are not accepting work requests from council species at this time." Aura felt something she had not felt in a long time. It was fear. Far across the galaxy, the colonies faced their own disaster. A plague had broken out on 3 worlds. It spread quickly, killing thousands before anyone understood what was happening. The medical teams worked day and night, but they could not stop it. Al was a young scholar who had always been curious about humans. While others celebrated their departure, he had felt uneasy. Now, standing in a hospital filled with dying patients, he understood why. "Our medical databases are incomplete," a doctor told him. "Half of our treatment protocols were written by human physicians. They updated our systems constantly. Without them, we are working with information that is 50 years old." "Can we contact the humans who worked here before?" "We sent messages. They responded politely. They said they hope we find a solution to our problem." Al noticed that the doctor's hands were shaking, but they will not help. "They said they are busy with their own matters. They wished us good health." The plague killed 200,000 before it finally burned itself out. Later investigations showed that human doctors had identified and contained similar outbreaks dozens of times over the past century. They had done it quietly, without asking for praise or recognition. They had simply seen a problem and fixed it. In the darkness between stars, trade ships began to disappear, not from attacks or accidents, but because their navigation systems failed. The routes through dangerous space had been mapped by human explorers. The charts had been updated by human navigators. Without them, ships flew into asteroid fields and gravity wells that should have been marked clearly on their maps. Holt heard about the lost ships while working on his family's farm in Nebraska. He had spent 10 years guiding vessels through the most dangerous regions of the galaxy. He had saved countless lives by knowing exactly where the dangers were. "Do you feel bad for them?" his sister asked. "Watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. I feel bad for the crews," he said. "They did not vote against us. They were just doing their jobs, but the council made their choice. We cannot save everyone from their own decisions." Maria Santos received a message from her old supervisor. It was long and desperate. The power systems she had maintained were failing. The city was experiencing blackouts. People were afraid. "Please," the message begged, "please come back and help us." Maria read the message 3 times. Then she deleted it and went back to work on the new fusion plant she was building in Arizona. Earth had its own projects now. Earth had its own future to build. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. Communication networks were failing. Medical systems were crashing. Trade routes were becoming death traps. And everywhere the same question was being asked: where are the humans? Refused to show concern. "These are temporary problems," he told the gathered delegates. "We are the great species of this galaxy. We built civilizations that lasted for millions of years before humans even existed. We do not need them." But his voice was not as confident as before, and when he looked around the hall, he saw fear in the eyes of his fellow leaders. A young delegate stood up. "Elder, with respect, we must reconsider our position. The humans did more for us than we realized. Perhaps we should invite them back." "Invite them back." Skin turned a darker shade of blue, a sign of anger among his people. "We are not beggars. We will solve these problems ourselves." "But Elder, our people are dying, our ships are lost, our cities are going dark." "Then we will learn. We will adapt. We will not crawl back to the humans and admit that we needed them all along." The session ended without any decisions. The delegates returned to their worlds and tried to fix things on their own. Some succeeded for a while, most failed. On Earth, Lisa continued her work documenting the return. She interviewed thousands of humans who had come home. Their stories were remarkably similar. They had worked hard. They had helped where they could. They had been treated as less than equal for their entire careers, and when they left, they took their knowledge with them. "It is not revenge," one old engineer told her. "We are not trying to hurt them. We are just tired of giving everything and receiving nothing in return. We gave them 200 years of our best work. They gave us a vote that said we were not good enough, so we left." Lisa wrote these words down carefully. She knew that someday the galaxy would want to understand what had happened. They would want to know why the humans left and why they did not come back. The answer was simple. They were never asked to stay in the first place. Daniel Perry watched the news reports from his home in Colorado. He saw the chaos spreading across the galaxy. He saw the fear growing in alien eyes. He felt no joy in their suffering. He only felt tired. "They will come asking for help eventually," his wife said. "I know," Daniel replied. "Will we help them?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "That depends on how they ask." Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the value of things taken for granted. The lesson had only just begun. 1 year after the vote, the Galactic Council met in a hall that was darker than before. Half of the lights had failed, and no one knew how to fix them. The flags of 300 species still hung from the walls, but many were torn and dusty. There were no workers left to care for them. Walked to the central podium with slower steps than he used to take. The past year had aged him badly. His blue skin had turned gray at the edges, and his voice had lost its power. Around him, the delegates looked tired and afraid. They had come to discuss the crisis, but no one knew what to say. "The situation is worse than we thought," admitted the military commander of the hegemony forces. He was a massive creature with 4 arms and scales that could stop a laser blast. His species had conquered dozens of worlds through pure strength. Now he stood before the council looking helpless. 40% of our fleet is stranded," he continued. "The fuel synthesis stations have stopped working. Our engineers cannot understand the systems. They were designed by humans, maintained by humans. We never bothered to learn how they worked." A wave of uncomfortable silence moved through the hall. "It gets worse," said a delegate. "The Universal Translation Network is failing. In 3 months, we will not be able to understand each other." "Impossible," said. "The translators have worked for 10,000 years." "They have worked because humans rebuilt them 200 years ago. The old system was dying. Human linguists created a new network that connected every species in the galaxy. They maintained it without payment, without recognition. Now it is breaking down, and we do not have the knowledge to repair it." The council chamber filled with noise. Different languages crashed against each other as delegates argued and complained. Some were already having trouble understanding their neighbors. The translation system was failing even as they spoke about it. Far from the council, Lisa sat in her ship orbiting Earth. She had spent the past year collecting messages from across the galaxy. Thousands of them arrived every day. Some were angry, blaming humans for abandoning their posts. Others were desperate, begging for help with problems that were killing their people. A few were apologetic, admitting that the council had made a terrible mistake. She played one message for Holt, who had joined her project to document the departure. "Please," said a voice broken by static. "My daughter is sick. The medicine we need was made by human doctors. We do not know how to make more. She is only 10 years old. Please, if any human is listening, please help us." Closed his eyes. "How many messages like this do we receive?" "Hundreds every day," Lisa said. "From parents, from doctors, from ordinary people who never voted against us. They are suffering because of decisions their leaders made." "What do we do?" Lisa did not have an answer. On Earth, the government had closed all communication channels with the Galactic Council. This was not done out of anger. It was done because there were simply too many requests to handle. Every species wanted human help. Every world needed human knowledge. Earth could not save everyone, and trying to choose who deserved help felt impossible. Maria Santos had been asked to lead a team that would decide which requests to answer. She refused. "I spent my whole career helping people who looked down on me," she told the government officials. "I do not want to spend the rest of it deciding who deserves to live and who deserves to die. Let them figure it out themselves. That is what they wanted, is it not?" The officials had no response. In his research facility, Al worked without sleep. He had spent the past year studying human history, trying to understand what his people had lost. What he found amazed him. Humans had been fixing galactic problems since the day they joined the Council. They mediated 847 conflicts between species. They prevented wars that could have killed billions. They did this quietly, without asking for anything in return. They developed cures for 12 plagues that threatened to wipe out entire species. They built communication networks, power systems, and transportation routes. They created the medicine that kept children healthy. They designed the navigation charts that kept trade ships safe. And they did all of this while being treated as second-class citizens. They accepted the worst jobs, the most dangerous assignments, the tasks that no other species wanted to do. They worked in places where they were insulted, ignored, and sometimes attacked. They kept working anyway. Why, Al asked himself, why did they do so much for so little? He found the answer in a speech given by a human ambassador a century ago. Her name was Moore, and she had been asked why humans volunteered for a dangerous mission to save an alien colony. Because they needed help, she had said. Because we could provide it, because that is what good neighbors do. Al read those words again and again. Good neighbors, such a simple idea, and his people had thrown it away. The council voted to send a formal apology to Earth. The message was long and carefully written. It admitted that humans had been treated unfairly. It promised that things would be different if they returned. It offered full, equal status and reparations for the harm that had been done. Earth's response arrived 3 days later. It was short. We received your message. We are considering your request. That was all. No promises, no timeline, no indication of what humans were thinking or feeling, just silence. Stared at the message for hours. He had spent his entire political career believing that his species was superior to all others. He had looked at humans and seen only primitive creatures who were lucky to be allowed in the council at all. Now his civilization was crumbling, and those primitive creatures held its future in their hands. What do we do? Asked the young aide. We wait, said. We wait and hope that they are more forgiving than we deserve. On Earth, Daniel Perry read the council's apology. He read it carefully, looking for the words that would tell him whether they truly understood what they had done. He did not find them. They apologize for treating us unfairly, he told his wife. But they do not apologize for believing we were beneath them. They want us back because they need us, not because they respect us. Is that enough? Daniel looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying because his people had left. Children were sick. Ships were lost. Cities were going dark. Part of him wanted to help immediately, to rush back and fix everything. But another part of him remembered 200 years of being treated like a servant. 200 years of working without thanks. 200 years of watching his people give everything and receive nothing. No, he said finally, it is not enough. Not yet. 18 months after the vote, Al stood before the Galactic Council with the most important presentation of his life. The hall was cold now. The heating systems had failed weeks ago, and no one could fix them. Delegates wrapped themselves in blankets and coats, their breath visible in the frigid air. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Al began. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled. What he was about to say would change everything his people believed about humans. I have spent the past 18 months studying human contributions to our civilization. What I found has forced me to question everything I thought I knew. The delegates listened in silence. They were desperate for answers, for any explanation of why their galaxy was falling apart. We believed humans were useful workers but nothing more, Al continued. We thought they were lucky to be part of our great civilization. We were wrong. The truth is that humans built our civilization. We just never bothered to notice. He activated a display that showed a map of the galaxy. Points of light appeared across it, each one representing a human contribution. Communication networks, he said. 90% of our long-range communication systems were designed, built, or maintained by humans. They did not charge us for this work. They simply saw that the old systems were failing and created new ones. More lights appeared on the map. Medical advances. Human doctors developed cures for 12 extinction-level plagues affecting other species. They shared these cures freely. They asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked angry, others looked ashamed. His face showed no expression at all. Conflict resolution. Human mediators prevented 847 wars between council species. Many of you sitting in this hall would be dead if not for human diplomats who worked tirelessly to find peaceful solutions. A murmur passed through the crowd. Trade routes. Human navigators mapped the safe passages through dangerous space. Human fuel specialists kept our ships flying. Human engineers maintained the stations that powered our fleets. Al paused and looked directly at. We called them the youngest species. We treated them as children who should be grateful for our attention. But the truth is that they were holding us together. They were the ones who fixed things when they broke. They were the ones who saw problems and solved them without being asked. They were the glue that kept 300 species working as one. "This is an exaggeration," said. His voice was weak, and he did not sound convinced by his own words. "It is not," Al replied. "I have documentation for every claim. Reports, records, testimonies. The evidence is overwhelming. Humans did more for this council in 200 years than most species have done in 10,000. The military commander rose from his seat. His massive form cast a shadow over the delegates around him. "I did not want to believe it," he said slowly. "My people are warriors. We conquered worlds. We built an empire through strength. But without human support, my fleet is helpless. My ships sit dead in space because we cannot make fuel. My soldiers cannot reach their posts because the navigation systems have failed. I have come to accept a hard truth." He looked around the chamber with eyes that held no pride. "We are not as strong as we thought we were. We needed humans more than we knew." One by one, other delegates began to speak. Admitted that her people's food supply depended on human technology, and confessed that human doctors had saved her child from a disease that no physician could cure. A representative from a small species said that humans had helped his people survive their first contact with the council, protecting them from those who would have taken advantage of their weakness. The stories went on for hours. Each one revealed another way that humans had quietly supported the galaxy. Each one showed how much had been lost when they left. Finally stood up. The hall fell silent. He was the one who had led the vote against humans. He was the one who had called them unworthy of respect. Everyone waited to hear what he would say. "I was wrong," he said simply. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. "I looked at humans and saw only what they lacked. They were not as old as us. They were not as powerful as us. They did not have the technology or the history that we had. I thought these things made them lesser." He paused and closed his eyes. "I did not see what they had that we did not. They had kindness without condition. They had service without expectation. They saw beings who looked down on them and helped them anyway. That is a strength I do not possess. That is a strength most of us do not possess." The chamber was completely silent. "We must bring them back," continued. "Not because we need their skills, though we do. Not because our civilization is collapsing without them, though it is. We must bring them back because we were wrong to push them away. We must admit our mistake and ask for forgiveness." A vote was called. For the first time in council history, every single species voted the same way. The decision was unanimous. A delegation would be sent to Earth to formally apologize and request humanity's return. Al was chosen to lead the delegation. He did not want the responsibility, but he understood why it had to be him. He was the one who had uncovered the truth. He was the one who could explain to the humans that the council finally understood what they had lost. Before he left, he visited the empty offices where human workers had once served. The desks were still there, covered in dust. The tools were still in their places. Everything looked like the humans had just stepped out for a moment and would return soon. But they had been gone for 18 months, and the galaxy was dying without them. Al picked up a small object from one of the desks. It was a photograph of a human family, smiling and happy, standing in front of a strange blue ocean. On the back, someone had written, "Home is where the heart is." He carefully placed the photograph in his bag. He would return it to its owner if he could. It was a small gesture, but he had learned from the humans that small gestures often meant the most. The delegation's ship launched toward Earth, carrying with it the hopes of 300 species. They had treated humans as servants. They had voted to reduce them to second-class citizens. Now they were coming to beg those same humans for help. Al wondered if the humans would forgive them. He wondered if he would forgive them if their situations were reversed. He did not know the answer, but he knew he had to try 2 years after the vote that changed everything, a ship from the Galactic Council entered Earth's solar system. Al stood at the viewing window and watched the blue planet grow larger. He had seen images of Earth before, but nothing had prepared him for its beauty. Swirls of white clouds moved across blue oceans and green land. It looked peaceful. It looked like home. The ship was directed to land in a place called Geneva. Al had learned that this was where humans once gathered to discuss peace and cooperation among themselves. It seemed like a fitting place for what was about to happen. Sam Turner was waiting for them when they arrived. He was an older man with kind eyes and a calm voice. He had been chosen as Earth's representative because he was known for being fair and honest. He did not hate the Council, but he did not fear them either. "Welcome to Earth," Sam said. "I hope your journey was comfortable." Al bowed in the human style. He had practiced the gesture many times. "Thank you for receiving us. We know this meeting is not easy for your people." Sam nodded but said nothing. He led the delegation to a simple building with white walls and large windows. Inside, a conference room had been prepared with seats for all the alien visitors. Water and food were provided. Everything was clean and efficient. When everyone was seated, Sam remained standing. He looked at each member of the delegation in turn. His expression was neither angry nor welcoming. It was simply patient. "You have come to ask us to return," he said. "Before you speak, I want you to understand something. We did not leave because you us power. We did not leave because you limited our expansion or reduced our voting rights." He paused to let his words settle. "We left because you us dignity. For 200 years our people worked beside yours. We fixed your ships and healed your sick. We taught your children and protected your borders. We gave everything we had, and in return, you told us we were not good enough to be your equals." Who had insisted on joining the delegation lowered his head. "We understand now. We were blind to your contributions. We saw only what we wanted to see." "Yes," Sam agreed. "And now you see the truth. But understanding is not enough. Understanding does not bring back the workers who were insulted every day of their careers. Understanding does not heal the pain of being told that your entire species is inferior." The room was heavy with silence. Al felt the weight of centuries of mistakes pressing down on him. He wanted to apologize, but he did not know if words could fix what had been broken. "What do you want from us?" asked. His voice cracked as he spoke. Sam sat down and folded his hands on the table. "We want partnership, true partnership. Not the kind where you make decisions and we follow them. Not the kind where you take credit and we do the work. We want to stand beside you as equals, with equal votes and equal respect." "That is reasonable," said quickly. "We can offer that. We also want an end to the idea of junior and senior species. Every species in the Council should have the same rights, regardless of how long they have been members. A species that joined yesterday should be treated the same as a species that joined 10,000 years ago." This request caused some uncomfortable shifting among the delegates. Their entire system was based on age and tradition. What Sam was asking would change everything. "Furthermore," Sam continued, "we will not force any human to return to Council space. Those who wish to help may do so by their own choice. Earth will not send workers to fill positions just because you need them. If a human chooses to work on an alien world, it will be because they want to, not because they have to." Al leaned forward. "You are offering help, but only on your terms." "Yes," Sam said. "That is exactly what we are offering. You can accept these terms or you can leave. We will not negotiate. We have already given 200 years of unconditional service. That time is over." The delegation asked for a moment to discuss among themselves. They gathered in a corner of the room and spoke in hushed voices. Some thought the terms were too harsh. Others thought they were fair. A few thought they should accept anything just to get human help again. In the end, it was who spoke for the group. He walked back to the table and stood before Sam Turner. Then, Slowly and deliberately, he bowed in the human style. "We accept your terms," he said. "All of them. And I want to add something that was not asked for but should be given. A public apology to every human who ever served the Council. An admission that we were wrong to treat you as we did. Not because we need you, but because it is right." Sam's expression softened slightly. "That would be welcome." "There is one more thing," said. He reached into his robes and pulled out an old document. "This is the original vote from 2 years ago, the one that started all of this. I want to destroy it here in front of you to show that those words no longer represent the Council's position." He tore the document in half, then in half again. The pieces fell to the floor like dead leaves. Over the following months, the news spread across the galaxy. Humans were returning, but things would be different now. They would come as partners, not servants. They would help because they chose to, not because they were forced to. And they would be treated with the respect they had always deserved. Daniel Perry came out of retirement to serve once again as an ambassador. He walked into the rebuilt council chamber and took his place among the other delegates. This time, no one looked at him with contempt. This time, when he spoke, everyone listened. Maria Santos led a team back to the capital to repair the power systems. But now she was paid fairly for her work, and engineers learned beside her instead of watching from a distance. The city's lights came back on, and people celebrated in the streets. Holt returned to the stars, guiding ships through dangerous space. But now he was called captain, and his crew included members of 6 different species who treated him as their leader and friend. Lisa finished her book about humanity's departure. The final chapter was called The Return. In it, she wrote about the lessons that everyone had learned and the hope that the future would be different. On Earth, in a small house in Colorado, Daniel Perry sat with his wife and watched the sunset. The sky turned orange and pink, just as it had on the day he left the council for the last time. But now he was going back. "Are you ready?" his wife asked. Daniel smiled. "I am ready, not because they apologized, not because they finally understand. I am ready because there are good people out there who need help, and helping people is what we do. It is who we are." He looked up at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "They thought our silence was weakness. They thought we left because we were hurt, but we left to teach them something important. Sometimes the quietest voice carries the strongest message. Sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do." His wife took his hand, and what message did they learn? Daniel thought about all the humans who had worked without thanks, served without recognition, and given without receiving. He thought about the 200 years of invisible labor that had held the galaxy together. "That strength is not about power," he said finally. "It is about what you choose to do with it. We chose to help. We always have. We always will. That is what makes us human." The stars shone bright above them, no longer distant and cold, but full of promise and possibility. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it, not through war or conquest, but through something much stronger. Through kindness, through service, through the simple act of being good neighbors. And that was the most human thing of all.